What is deschooling? There may be other meanings for this word, but let us have a working definition for this session. Deschooling is the process of shedding school-based practices and ideas that limit homeschooling. So, what deschooling does is to create an open space of possibility in your mind, a shift in perspective that leads to freedom, that allows true learning. So think of it as a detox period of traditional schooling. We're going to discuss these topics, but we are actually going to start from the bottom. You and your indoctrination. Traditional schooling or mass education has infused our entire culture. Most of you probably grew up with traditional parents who convince you that success is to become an engineer, lawyer, doctor, or a nurse, although we do need more doctors and nurses now. And if you're not so sharp, a teacher. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong to want certain professions. But if the decision is largely influenced by the wrong precepts, it limits the concept of choice and breeds unnecessary heartaches and frustrations to come. Now, you probably had more than 12 years of homeschooling, of schooling, and even after you left school, you continued to live in a school-based world. School has practically influenced your whole life. Your indoctrination about traditional school runs deep. And it seeps in all your decisions, your expectations, your assumptions, and your priorities. Now, traditional schooling is fine. I studied in public schools all my life. It is just that in homeschooling, the learning process is natural and the teaching process is intentional, specific, and more effective. So, you're here, so you want to homeschool, or you're homeschooling but still stressed, or perhaps you're just curious. Let's begin then. You might assume that your homeschool moments, now that you're thinking about it, will always look like this. Well, yes, maybe. Sometimes, but not always. It might look like this. Sometimes, or at times, and even often if you are less informed about homeschooling in general. And depending on how much you have prepared your mind and your heart, you might fall into the traps of the evil one. Guilt, shame, and anxiety. Many homeschooling parents went through these in their earlier period. Guilt for not being able to teach enough, maybe. Shame for feeling unqualified or not good enough. And anxiety when the overwhelm, the stress, the constant fear or worry get the better of them. Now, these are just some of the school-based traditional ideas that can challenge and bug you. And, these are just scratching the surface. One, learning comes from teachers and from being taught. Two, the right things to learn are based on age and grade level. Three, learning happens on school days with lessons divided into subjects. Four, learning must accompany proof of its occurrence, such as portfolio reviews or projects. And five, you have to be quiet and or very still to learn. Everyone should behave as similarly as possible. Let's talk about them. Okay. Learning comes from teachers and from being taught. No. Now, you know that teachers are no longer the only source of knowledge and information. The internet changed all that. And with this, I'm actually referring to so many, especially first-time homeschooling parents, who question their qualification and ability to teach and guide their kids. Now, being a parent is a God-ordained role. It is both an opportunity and a loving responsibility. You don't have to be an expert or certified to facilitate your child's learning. Number 2, the right things to learn are based on age and grade level. Nikki Truesdell and Sarah Mackenzie reiterate, grade levels are an artificial construct. They didn't even exist until 100 years ago. They were designed specifically for mass education. It doesn't matter what grade level of math or grammar your child is in. What matters is the progress. Now, being overly focused on grades and levels and, comparing your kids with others is a surefire formula for stress, guilt, and overwhelm. So, simply put, if you want to de-school, no ranking, no competition, no comparison. Okay, number 3. Learning happens on school days with lessons divided into subjects. Well, yes, having a schedule and some sort of a structure can help parents, especially those who work. But natural learning occurs more often than you think, in a very unstructured manner. Subjects often bleed into each other in the younger years up to grade school. Let's consider this example. So maybe one day, you decided to have a learning activity with your child, say cooking. So when you consider the ingredients and their combinations and how they react to each other and maybe how they react to heat, that's science and chemistry. When you do costing and measurements, that's mathematics. When you look into the food nutrients, that's health and nutrition. As you follow the step-by-step process, the recipe, that's organization and development, which you can integrate in English or Filipino, whether in writing or oral presentation. And when you remind and teach them to clean up the mess after, that's teaching them responsibility. And yes, the subject is home economics or HELE. And you're doing it on a Saturday. And it's definitely not a school day. Okay. So number 4. Learning must accompany proof of its occurrence, such as portfolio reviews or projects or submissions. Now, I can understand the idea behind these submissions if the accountability is equally shared by parents and teachers. But you are homeschooling. Nobody else knows your child more than you do. You, as the parent-teacher, spend all the available time with your child. Nobody else has right or capacity to judge, assess, or grade your child more than you. And number 5, you have to be quiet and or very still to learn. And everyone should behave as similarly as possible. Hindi pwede maingay, hindi pwede magtanong ng advanced questions, hindi pwede tumayo, magunat, Now, related to this, we often have this discussion on how to help children with special needs handle social, emotional situations. Well, I think it should also work the other way around. We should educate ourselves and our children to help and understand everyone. Now more than ever, we should teach kindness and inclusivity and embrace diversity in people. Meron talaga mga bata na kahit malikot talagang natututo, ganun talaga sila mag-aral. Yung iba gusto may music, yung iba wala. So, we should respect that. So just remember that each child is unique, including yours, and learns and behaves and responds differently. Now, there are more where these came from. To experience true freedom of homeschooling, you have to unwind these. Now, let's look at the first part. Let me begin by saying that homeschooling can be difficult because it is actually parenting, raising our kids. Alam natin gaano kaimportante ang parenting. Kaya siya mahirap kasi importante siya. A radical thinking even suggests na ipinapaampon natin temporarily ang mga batang anak natin sa mga sandaling iniiwan natin sila sa traditional school or sa iba. Our children learn no matter what. So the question is, who is teaching? And what are being learned? What are being taught? Now, the foundation of the very principle of homeschooling is character development. Now, how is it different from personality development? To remember this more, take P to mean performance. Something you can see, observe, and watch. Now, it is great to have children who would respectfully greet the elders, or who would massage you when you're tired, or who would study diligently. Magagaling na bata yan. And usually naman, the personality or behavior reflects the character. So what is character then? Now take C to mean conscience. Something intangible, the very core of the heart, mind, and spirit. So simply put, character is who you are when no one is looking. Or character is who you are when no human is looking, because of course God is always watching. So when a child greets elders, it should be motivated by deep respect. Not just because the child wants to look good, or when your child massages you after a long day, it is because your child appreciates your hard work and wants you to have better rest. Or when a child studies, it is because he values learning and not because he just wants the fame and rewards or vain superiority over others. There's absolutely nothing wrong with personality development, but it is more grace-filled if the child has good character. Think of it this way. A child with good character will always have a good personality, but the one with great personality may not always have good intentions. Now, how do you teach this? Paano mo ituturo to, no? Well, you actually don't. Your children naturally learn from you and from others, from the environment, the people they interact with, what they are exposed to. But mostly, they learn as they observe you. Report cards and grades. Okay, so aligning with DepEd, submitting grades and other required documents will make sure your child has the requisite records in formal education to move up in level. Now, but the principles of homeschooling do not have to be compromised. Deschooling means you and your child will not base your value on just ranking, awards, and other such schoolish notions. Bonuses lang yon. What you need to be aware of is that children usually have capabilities to do certain tasks at different times. Therefore, provide the grades or progress reports accordingly. We'll discuss this more later. In Victorious, we help parents realize that grades are meant to show and recognize effort and progress, and also as a guide to discover the child's giftings. Why? Well, true education runs much deeper. Test scores or grades do not indicate real learning unless you are sincere, forward-looking, and proactive. Grading should be honest and reflective useful, and compassionate. Progression is the goal. Being well educated is the goal. Okay, developmental tasks. Do not try to do too many things at once. Don't rush. If you find yourself wondering how you can fit it all in, ang dami topics, ang dami subjects, dami aralin like that, see where you can simplify. There is an optimum time for every skill, from reading, handwriting or cursive writing, and math concepts. And every child's optimum time will be unique to him or her. May nauuna, may nauhuli. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang naman ibig sabihin na nauuna ay mas magaling. No? Hindi po. Mercurial po yung developmental stages na ito. So, for example, Dr. Beechik says, it should only take about 3 weeks to learn cursive. If we teach before the optimum time, kids will work hard for up to a year. Now, if we wait for the optimum time, they can learn it in less than a month. O, diba? So, at a certain age, for example, when they are mga 13 na, no one cares when they learned it, as long as they can do it well. Now, if you have this mindset, it takes much of the frustration out, and it respects each child's God-given developmental level. Most of things are naturally learned by young children. We only explicitly teach certain skills and lessons when they are older. Now, consider this. The average age for girls to start reading is 6.5. For boys, 7.5. That's average. So it means some will be ready earlier than that, some later. Now, other well-known educators like Raymond Moore and David Elkind have been preaching this for decades. But most mothers are too anxious to listen, or minsan too competitive. In my opinion, misinformed lang. Ako po, natuto po akong magbasa noong 8 years old na po ako. Grade 2 ako noon. But I read and finished and enjoyed Victor Hugo's unabridged novel, Les Miserables, the following year. So I've experienced it and I've seen it happen in so many of my students, so I know that this homeschooling philosophy is true. The ultimate goal is deep, rich, real learning, quality over quantity, and fun while in the journey. Okay, so let's distill this some more. On reading. Phonics. You have known about it for years. Why pay for something that you already know? What's the big secret in teaching reading? There isn't any. Phonics should be associated with stories read from your child's books. Once the child is reading storybooks, reading becomes a skill to use, not a subject to learn. The skill of reading can then be practiced across the other subjects. That is why we advocate extensive reading. All we really need is time and practice. The same principle applies to basic math. Make use of what you have at home to teach number sense and the basic arithmetic. I made this one. Count some beans, add and play with beads. Then take some away. Subtract and there you go. Sing some songs and skip count 2. And that's the way to go. Ayan. So make your children aware of what math concepts really are in real life. Books, worksheets, and other online resources are available when you feel that they are ready. And when it becomes too technical for you, tulad halimbawa, nung panganay ko, nasa integers na siya, tsaka mga polynomials, ayan, ask for help. That's what I did. I hired a tutor. Ayan. Now, on scheduling. Now, in reality, before the pandemic, kids spend about 6 hours each day in school. But explicit teaching does not take that long. Why? Your kids do a lot of stuff in school like playtime, recess, video watching, art class, and physical education. Kasama pa yung mga programs and mga rehearsals nila and whatnot, right? So academics only take up maybe 2 hours or so. And even then, the process of teaching a lesson to a large group takes longer than teaching 101 or to a small group if you have multiple level children. Now, this is the suggestion of education experts internationally. Kalalabas lang nito. Okay, preschoolers to grade 2 should spend about 1 hour or less on homeschooling. Grade 3 to 4, mga 1 to 2 hours. And the older ones may be around 2 to 3 hours. High schoolers can definitely study longer and independently at that. And some days, yes, even weekdays, you can take breaks. Have your break days, lazy days. Di ba may holidays, bagyo, or breaks sa school? Syempre ganun din. Homeschooling gives you a chance to really focus on quality over quantity. Now, let's talk about curriculum. Okay, curriculum is actually the subjects, the courses, the topics that you're supposed to study in a certain period and with the methodology of your choice most of the time. Okay, so curriculum can be helpful if you know when to use it and when to drop it. So in Victorious, we did the research on what the younger children, particularly, in public and private schools are studying in each grade in order to make sure children are covering approximately the same topics. That's why we have the quarterly learning guide. The open curriculum and flexibility will be determined by your preferred books, curriculum, and learning materials, as well as, of course, your children's interests. So when curriculum is servant, tool siya eh. You can drop it. Anytime something better is happening or if your child isn't ready for a certain lesson. But the beauty of it is, you can make use of it if it works for you and your child. Now, on grades. As mentioned, you as parent teachers have the sole right to provide grades to your child. Baka sabihin nyo hindi po ako teacher so hindi ako marunong. And that is why you have us. We do not only simplify how to do it using an editable grading form, but we also assist. This is because deschooling can be a long process at hindi talaga madaling iwaglit ang nakasanayan. So we understand that parents are nervous to provide grades kasi in traditional schooling, si teacher lang ang nagbibigay ng grades. So parents fear they might give grades that their kids don't deserve. Pag sobrang kinakabahan, hindi pa talaga na de-school. More often than not, the fear stems from the fear of being judged or not meeting expectations ng iba. So we had parents who were so detailed that, Teacher Joby had to discuss transmutation tables and equivalents and how to compute. Ayan, nagsisession siya. Minsan one-on-one. Some parents naman were relaxed enough to provide grades in estimates and according to the children's scores and outputs. Paano yun? Okay. So you give quizzes, oral recitations, written exercises, performance tasks, and provide an input scores. But really, certain aspects like effort, creativity, sensitivity, resilience, and a myriad of others, ito mga to hindi naka-quantify. They cannot really be quantified. And so, you need that discernment, that assessment, that judgment to approximate grade sometimes. Hindi po hula yun kasi meron po kayong pinagbasehan at naobserbahan. Well, the truth is, nobody will question the grades you will give your child. Although wag naman 100. No, we give ceiling grades per quarter. Kami, at least that's what we do. So the child knows that there's always room for improvement. The process of deschooling can be hard for you, especially if you're a first timer, and like I said, if you haven't really opened yourself to the idea yet. Kahit na nag-start ka na mag-deschool, every now and then, your indoctrination of traditional homeschooling will hound you and make you doubt the process and your decision. You might question your qualification as your child's teacher, and you might see other kids and they seem so perfect and you feel so unworthy, for lack of a better word. Now, before the pandemic, homeschooling was a questionable way of educating children. So we got questions like, oh, bakit? Special ba yung anak mo? So, in the past, nasasagot ko minsan ng, of course, special ang mga anak ko, kaya nga ako ang magtuturo. So, you will have these moments from time to time. And then, you may have people also commenting about and questioning your style and your way of handling your child's education. And some of the common periods will be yung kapag hindi pa marunong magbasa yung bata, ayan, nagkakaroon ka na ng doubt. Now basically, the entire time when your child hasn't learned how to read yet, matitempt ka to look for experts or paid classes to enroll them in. So okay lang naman, as support, but now I'm telling you that your child can naturally learn to read with exposure, time, and practice. And syempre, if again, you have parents or in-laws or relatives questioning you, dagdag stress and pressure. Or if your child is growing older, feeling mo hindi ka na enough, and you may feel that way pag hindi ka talaga nakapag-deschool. Again, the guilt, the shame, and the anxiety. Now, you have to face these head on and don't let them control you. Yes, we align with state standards and requirements, but these are your kids. Your authority over them is God ordained. So therefore, God will sustain you. Make the commitment. Be intentional. So even if the going gets tough, you just take a break and carry on. Own it. Know your weapons. Put in the work and time. Magbasa, mag-research. You are here right now, and therefore, you will have been more informed and educated after. Be proactive. Your journey will not always be smooth sailing. There will be challenges ahead, but instead of complaining, focus on solutions. That's being proactive. So deschooling really is all about learning to trust your God-ordained role as a parent to your child. It is the building of trust between you and your child. So when you impose too much school-like structures, you can't relax. So your child can't also relax. Hindi kasi pwedeng magkamali, hindi pwedeng magulo, hindi pwede yung maraming bagay. So especially the younger ones, please let your children play. They learn that way. Now let's take to heart the wisdom of a homeschooling expert. She said, many parents are intelligent, enthusiastic, creative people doing a marvelous job of teaching their children. But, sad to say, most of them do not know what a great job they are doing. They think it goes smoothly in everyone else's house, and theirs is the only place that has problems. Now, I'll let you in on a secret about teaching. There is no place in the world where it rolls along smoothly without problems. So as you homeschool, Little by little, you will begin to ease into a new way of seeing and being with your child. We hope this session helps you shorten the process of deschooling. Later on, you will find questions and doubts have fallen away. Struggling for control is over. And an amazing amount of joyful learning happens more often. So, trust the process, trust your child, trust yourself, and most of all, trust God.